and you know, dive into it. The whole purpose of today's lectures, it's really like a 3-day event, you know, at least minimum 6 hours. But because of COVID and because of Zoom calls, I've condensed it into core pertinent information to really get you a good perspective to understand how to work with buyers, how to influence buyers to work with you, and the mindset and the models that are necessary for you to understand the phenomenal practice of why you got a real estate license and working with buyers. Now, I'm also gonna teach Win with Sellers. I'm contemplating if I'm gonna do it for the month of November or in December, okay? But really it's the mindsets, the models on how to win with buyers. You know, the mindset of the practice of how top agents work to convert potential buyers. And this is where a lot of agents fall short, is they are having a hard time converting buyers. So what's the purpose of today's lecture? You know, to enjoy the most in working with buyers, some of the challenges that you will incur working with buyers, your business goals this year, and then as we approach 2021, and then what is your ultimate goal in working specifically with buyers. Now, one cool thing about Keller Williams Realty is we're all about education. And I'm gonna just give you an example of the material that I have. This is the material that you can download. This is the instructor's curriculum, but you can download it, as I mentioned, through mykw.kw.com, and it'll give you reference, it'll give you scripts and dialogues and how to dive into the system. Okay, you guys all ready? You guys excited?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get going. So in order for you to be a successful entrepreneur and really dive into understanding the mindset of buyers, because in my opinion, buyers are liars. Well, Simon, what do you mean by buyers are liars? Well, you know, you're going to see that when you work with buyers, you're going to get buyers that are not truthfully involved or really engaged with you. Here's the common denominator and the component to your success. You got to ask specific questions. You got to dive in, and some agents, for some apparent reason, feel uncomfortable asking questions. Now, I'm gonna be very straightforward and very transparent with you. And it took me a long time for me to understand these components as a new agent 23 years ago. I just thought anyone that was interested in buying or inquiring about buying a property, I was excited. I was like, yeah, you want to buy? Let's go find property. I would get them in my car, drive around, look at properties. And you know what? It was a waste of time. Literally a waste of time. Because one, I didn't pre-screen them. I didn't pre-qualify them. I did not send them to the lender. I didn't know their financials. I did not know their credit. I did not know their position, but I was going above and beyond and realizing that it was a waste of my time. Because at the end, either they didn't qualify, I didn't connect with them, and I just spent literally hours with the buyer without understanding their position. So we're gonna rechange the cycle on how to approach that. And we're gonna role play too, okay? I'm gonna pick and choose one of you. I'll be the agent, you'll be the buyer, or I can say vice versa. You'll be the agent and I'll be the buyer. Now there's 7 components to a buyer service cycle, 7 components. One is leads to appointments. And if you don't have anything to write, I highly recommend have a notation, something, and start writing, because a lot of the information I won't repeat. So number 1, leads to appointments. Number 2, Prepare for the buyer consultation. And this is a very important component, is knowing how to have effective dialogue, but consultations to understand the buyer's position. What is their motivation? Why now? Why not in the future? Where is their credit right now? Where is their financials right now? Do they have a down payment? Do they have closing costs? Do they have a stable job? Okay, there's a lot of variables, and this is the whole purpose of today's lecture, to really just get a good, concise foundation. Then ultimately finding the home, offer, negotiating contracts, then ultimately the contact to close, and then what we call the post-close system. By identifying those 7 core components to your win with buyers, you'll have a more consistent base and a consistent approach and more money. Now, buyers are fun. And you're going to see that there's agents that like working exclusively with buyers, and then there's going to be some agents that exclusively like to work with sellers. And then there's where they like to work with both buyers and sellers, a combination of both, because your seller that sells their property will eventually buy a property. And if you are representing the buyer as a seller, then there you go. You're going to be working with buyers as well. So understanding those components of, concurrent closings, closing with a client who's a seller, and now as a client, as a buyer, there's 2 dynamics to that, okay? So let's dive into the leads and appointments. The lead conversion process captures, connects, closes, and cultivates buyers. It's about being fast. This is your first opportunity to gather detailed information about the buyer, determine if they're qualified, as I said, and then ultimately setting up the appointment. Prepare the buyer for the consultation. Before the appointment, update your value proposition. What is your value proposition? What are you going to offer that potential buyer, and the ability for them to feel comfortable, trust you, and want to do business with you? The actual consultation, when you're right here in the conference room, and now you have the buyers right here with you. You set the time, you set the date. Now what do you do? What do you say? How do you start that initial conversation? Then after your value proposition, the consultation, now let's go on the exciting aspect of it. Now that we know that they're pre-qualified, they're ready to rock and roll, the home search, okay? Looking at homes through the multiple listing service, okay? Off market, talking to one of our agents, hey, do you have any off market properties? Once we identify a property, then obviously the negotiation, submitting the offer, then getting counters and negotiating that. The goal is to get your offer considered. And I say this many times, getting your offer considered. Once your offer gets considered and ultimately gets accepted, now it's game on. Now the true component to why you got a real estate license really is the time. Because now your job is to close the deal. And that's where a lot of the buyer agents have challenges. Then obviously the contract to close. And what I mean by contract to close, there's going to be many variables. There's so many things that can go wrong in a transaction. You can come to the meeting of the minds of price, terms or conditions, appraisal issue, request for repairs, disclosure issues, something wrong with the property. So many variables, so many things. That's what we call contact to close, because there's going to be a lot of variables. Now, we all wish and hope that all offers that you submit, transactions close smoothly. That's the ultimate goal. And for the most part, most of the transactions close smoothly. But it's your dedication and your willingness to really be the proactive agent and be 2 steps ahead of the game from everyone, including the listing agent. Then obviously the post-close system, the goal of your real estate business to achieve close with satisfaction customer service abilities. Basically, was the client happy throughout the entire process? Those are the 7 core components to the 7-step service cycle that will ultimately make you a winner, okay? And this is why it's called Win with Buyers. All right, let's dive into the winning mindset, okay? Because this is really what the core of the whole entire process is. You got to have a good attitude. You're going to be exhausted sometimes, especially if your offers are not getting accepted. If you're driving around showing multiple properties on a given day, there may be times you'll see 2 to 3. And there's other times you'll see 4 to 5, and there may be times that you may see 7 to 8 transactions, or excuse me, homes. Here's how you need to minimize this, okay? By asking the right questions from the very beginning, then you narrow the entire MLS experience. Well, what do you mean by that, Simon? Very simple. By asking the right questions, you'll know their specific needs and wants. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what area are you looking at? Oh, we're looking in the city of Torrance. Phenomenal. Is that the only city you want to focus on, or is there another city that you also are interested? Ah, okay. Well, we're also looking at Gardena or Hawthorne. Okay. Why Gardena and why Hawthorne? Okay. Well, the reason is because I work in Los Angeles. Okay. So you want to be closer to be able to get to work. Okay. Awesome. Beautiful. At least you can condense those abilities so you're not going all over the place, driving around looking at homes because you don't have specifics to what their needs analysis of your clients are. I would say also have a checklist of things that you need to ask. You know, what are the core requirements that they want? Is it an SFR or a condo or a townhome, manufactured home? You know, how many bedrooms, how many baths? What are the amenities you're looking for? Do you want one that's on the hill? Do you want one on flat land? Do you want a nice large backyard? Do you want something with a pool? Do you want something that doesn't have a pool? Maybe you're looking for a 2-car garage or possibly a 3-car garage. There's so many variables, but the winning mindset is important. Okay, some of the things that I highly recommend, okay, this is what you need to follow. You may want to write this down. You need to know how to time block and spend time lead generating for buyers. Minimum 3 hours. Minimum 3 hours. Time block. I'm going to be doing time blocking for lead generating for 3 hours. Whatever that is it morning, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, it doesn't matter. You should at least be focusing on lead generating every single day, minimum of 3 hours. If you can do more, fantastic. If you do less, okay. It's the consistency, because your goal is to find buyers that want to buy. And there's a lot of events that ultimately get you to that position, as I told you about the 7 service cycles. You also need to have a database, okay? That database of past clients, friends, relatives, family, associates, business contacts. Anyone and everyone has at one point bought and sold real estate. So it doesn't matter. You don't just categorize someone because they have their own business. Business is everywhere. Buyers need to buy, sellers need to sell. Obviously, the other component of what we teach is the Ignite program as well. So just wanted to throw that you know, taking Ignite or taking Bold is just around the corner is also a component to your success. Here's the number 4 that I definitely recommend. Practice your scripts and your dialogues. Every single time, ladies and gentlemen, you got to practice. Well, what do you practice? You practice your skill sets, how to have conversations with the buyers, what to do, what to say, how to answer objection handlers. Well, Simon, how long have you been in real estate? I've only been in real estate for 3 weeks. How about that? How are you going to have that conversation? How are they going to feel comfortable with you if you only have 3 weeks of in the industry? It doesn't matter. It's the ability to set avenues of how you approach your business. Okay, it doesn't matter your skill set. It's the willingness to really continue progressing in this industry. And again, people will connect with you when they trust you and like you. Obviously, number 5 is your business approach. Being consistent in your business. This is the 4th quarter, meaning this is the last quarter of 2020. January 1st will be the 1st quarter and the 1st of the year. We need to start setting our expectations and our goals. Number 6, obviously use your KW technology tools, okay? That can definitely help you to attract and connect with more potential buyers. Using command, campaigns, landing pages, websites, your app, submitting your app to all the consumers that you have connections with, having that app download on your emails. Every email that you send, on the bottom, please download my app. Because once a consumer downloads the app, now you'll get their contact information. And when they're ready to buy, they'll have the resources there to navigate the technology aspect of it. Having a business plan. What is your expectations? What are your goals? How many deals do you want to close this quarter? Know your numbers. If your goal is to close 1 transaction per month, 2 transactions per month, how are we going to set those? Everything that we do has to be measurable. You got to measure everything. So if your goal is to do 1 consistent closing, working with several buyers, you got to understand that in order for you to close 1 deal or 2 deals, you got to continuously fill in your pipeline of new buyers coming in. And by doing so, because there's going to be some fallouts, you'll have a consistent base in your business. Now, the beauty is that the end of the year is just upon us. We're already, 2nd week of October. Before you know it, Halloween will be here. Before you know it, Zoom's November, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then the new year. This year went extremely quick for me, and that's just the way it is. But you got to start really looking at what you do now will set the parameters for 2021, okay? Because everything will show up 2 to 3 months later. All your hard work, your connections, your database, your conversations. It may not be right this minute that they're buying, but in the near future, if you're consistent and checking in with your clients, eventually you'll lock them in, and now you start the initial 7 service cycle process. Actively be engaged in your social media. I hate to say it, I'm one, for example, that I need to be a little bit more proactive in my social media. If I was, generating business. Having a concise buyer agency agreement. There's 2 components. And if you like, send me an email and I can send you what a buyer loyalty agreement. Now there is a form on Zip Forms called a buyer agreement. Okay, and that buyer agreement basically is language.
Buyer broker agreement?
Yes, on Zip Forms.
Yeah.
That form you can download, and I highly, highly recommend anytime you're working with a potential buyer, have a buyer rep in place, because that gives specific instructions from both parties, the buyer and the buyer's agent. It's what we call an agreement in place, just similar to a listing agreement in place. When we get a listing, there's a commitment, right? That commitment is, allow me 6 months minimum to service and list your property to ultimately find the right buyer that is ready, willing, and able for us to close the deal. The buyer representation agreement, better known as the BRE form, allows you the same specific, just terms around working exclusively with the buyer. And there's specific language in there that allows you to understand your position as a buyer's consultant, but also the buyer's responsibility to be committed to you and your company. The next is, you're continuously researching, reviewing homes. Every single day, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be on that multiple listings, looking at the market. What has popped up? What is under contract? What is pending? What closed? Because once you know how to engage in the market, you're going to be the local expert depending on what area you're working at. Because if you focus on a specific area, South Bay as an example, and you're constantly on the multiple listing service, you're going to be the expert. You're going to know without really looking at the property or the area. Oh, that area is already at the 1.1, 1.2 range. And you can have these conversations with consumers that makes you the local expert because you already understand the market. A very seasoned agent that reads and understands and follows the market can have these type of conversations with buyers. Yeah, that property may be a little overpriced without even looking at the multiple listing service. And there's agents that know and understand the market, because from one street to the other can dramatically change in prices, especially like Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach area, if that's the area of focus. But if you study the market and understand the different areas, then you'll have a good understanding based on square footage, amenities, lot size, year built, what amenities. You can kind of gauge a good, concise evaluation and conversations with the buyer. Part of the curriculum is obviously to attend, mega camp, family reunion, and participate eventually. Once you become a consistent closer, look into getting a KW MAPS coach, okay? Now that's down the line for the newer agent, but that's something that I highly recommend, having a coach that will navigate and get you to the level where you want to be, okay? Now let's talk about your actions. What are the actions that you want? Think about any buyer right now and what the process would look like, to ultimately get you to succeed. Think about the appointments and what can possibly go wrong. And then what are your limited beliefs from the goal of changing your actions and how you can redirect your belief system, okay? Now I'm going to throw it back at you. What are some of the challenges that you think that you'll face when dealing with a buyer? And just throw anything. What are some of your belief systems that you see or you think you see in regards to working with buyers? Anyone?
Working with multiple agents without letting you know.
Okay. Working with multiple agents without letting you know. Yeah, that can definitely happen. But this is why, and thank you, Farah, for sharing that. This is why you have to ask the right questions. Because if a buyer is working with other agents, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It all depends. It really all depends. Because in my opinion, it doesn't really matter to me. Because if I can find and identify a property, and this buyer does not have any buyer representation agreement in place, I'm going to try to lock them in with that opportunity to work with me. Now, the problem is sometimes, as I mentioned early through the process, buyers are liars, meaning they're not going to be very trustworthy with you sometimes. They're not going to tell you the truth. And there's a lot of buyers that are fishing other agents because they want to find that right deal, off-market deal. Okay, how do you work around those scenarios? Okay, asking the right questions. What other limited beliefs you see working with buyers?
Changing their mind.
Okay, buyers changing their minds. Be more specific, Farah.
They find the property that they like, and then you put an offer, and then they change their mind.
Okay, so you go through the whole entire process and the process of submitting an offer, and then at the last minute they change their mind. Okay, can that happen? Absolutely. How do you handle those type of conversations? Well, again, diving really deep into the buyer's position. Are you 100% sure this is the property you want to submit an offer? Does this home hit all the bells and whistles? Does this home have all the characteristics? And then I would do 3 layers. How does the house feel? Does the house feel cold? Does the house feel warm? Or does the house feel hot? You know, because in our industry, those are avenues that you will see when working with a lot of buyers. You know, they'll feel the house. Now, this house doesn't hit all the bullet points. This house is missing something. The house is too small. The bedrooms are too small. The way the kitchen is configured, it just doesn't have a good flow. The backyard is too small. The garage is too small. The house needs a lot of work. There's a lot of variables, but asking the right questions will ultimately get you to the position of getting that offer submitted. Now, as Farah was saying, you submit an offer and then they change their mind. What is the reason they're changing their mind? You know, is it cold feet? Is it the house? Is it their finances? There's many variables. But having a foundation from the very beginning, ladies and gentlemen, will address any concerns, you know, those what we call the belief systems. You know, you have no control, and I get it. You have no control over a buyer that changes their mind. Is it going to happen? It will happen. Unfortunately, it happens more so than ever. But if you have concise, direct questions, then you know if this buyer is 100% committed to you or not. Because you'll know from the very beginning. Now, there may be a position where a buyer does back out of the deal because they happen to find another property that they fell in love, or the property that they wanted in the originally fell out of escrow and now is available, and now they're transition. There's going to be a lot of variables, okay? But how do you, as a professional realtor, navigate those conversations? Now, you got to understand the process. You got to understand negotiations, objection handlers, knowing the ability to say, look, we submitted an offer here. You know, we are in a position and committed. Now, if the offer hasn't been considered or accepted, it changes everything. Then we can back out of the deal. That's perfectly fine. We can send it what is called a withdrawal of offer, a WO, and that's fine.
Now, this is, I'm sorry, but this is before you open escrow.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This is something like, because there's buyers that'll make multiple offers. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing a lot of buyers, very low inventory, but we're seeing multiple offers. Now, we're not going to tell that to the listing agent, hey, we got other offers submitted, we're just waiting. But we are in that position right now where buyers are submitting multiple offers to several different properties. That's perfectly fine as long as it does not get accepted, because once you get an accepted on one of the properties, you're now bound and committed to that process, because you don't want to be that agent that ultimately says, oh, you know what, we're canceling. Okay, what's the reason for cancellation? Okay, those are tough conversations to have. with that being said, there's another three components that I always lecture and talk about, is giving the good, the bad, and the ugly. We always love giving good conversations to all potential agents and buyers and sellers. Then we have to give some bad news. Shoot, the buyer decided to not go in that direction. We're not going to go forward with the process. And then ultimately the worst news, the ugly, what we call in conversations, where you as an agent have to have those conversations. You're in escrow, you're about to close, and then the buyer at the last minute loses, not loses, but they ultimately want to cancel. How do you save that deal? How do you have that conversation with the listing agent, especially if the seller is purchasing their uplake property, knowing how to navigate those parameters. Okay. Very good question. Thank you, Farah, for stepping up. Now let's dive into getting the most of the experience of today's lecture. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is a very loose training. I want you to ask questions. You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and obviously, ask any question as we go through the process. Now I'm committed here for 3 hours till 1 o'clock. As I mentioned, we'll have a 5-minute break every hour to the hour, so that way you can do what you need to do for 5 minutes and then come right back to the curriculum. Now, the beauty is, how do you get the most out of the experience, okay? Interaction, talking, asking me questions. I'm 23 years, I'm the team leader for the office, but I'm also a licensed real estate broker. I used to be the broker of record for this office for 6 years. And I understand the dynamics of, mediation, arbitrations, lawsuits, okay? You never want to hear lawsuits, but guess what? There is lawsuits in real estate. How do you navigate the frustrations, the pressure, the stress? There's so many variables that can happen in a real estate transaction, but at the end of the day, it's not, if you do everything correct, you could still be in a liability. But if you do the right things by properly engage on what the contract stipulates, then there's no reason why you should be involved in a chaos when this is a buyer-seller dispute. The problem with agents, they step in and now pretend to be legal consultants, tax consultants, experts in areas outside of real estate. And this is what gets agents in trouble. And the last thing you want is for the Department of Real Estate to do an investigation, because now you can jeopardize your real estate license. You worked so hard to obtain your license, but instantly you can lose your real estate license, restrict your license, terminate your license, revoke your license. So be very, very careful on how you approach. Now, I'm not here to scare you, okay? Because real estate is a fun career to be in. Real estate has blessed me and my family with so much, but I take this career very serious, and I always do the right thing. I never take shortcuts. And the reason you don't want to take shortcuts is because when you take shortcuts, and you're going to see, there's going to be times where you want to take shortcuts, it's not worth it. It is not worth it. Because eventually it'll come back to bite you. Always be honest, always be front, and always document everything. Paper trail is your friend. Paper trail will get you out of a court situation. Paper trail will help you understand what had transpired through a transaction, because you can't remember a transaction that happened 2 years ago exactly detail by detail. But if you pull the file and go through the motions, oh yes, I remember this conversation, it may ignite something in your mind that will put things into perspective because you wrote it down. So document anything and everything. In this industry, it's all about writing everything, all your concise emails, your text messages, and all your forms as well. because again, you just never know when you'll be in a liability situation, and it may not be even your fault, but it's something that happens, and now an attorney is asking for the file because the buyer is suing the seller, and you were the listing agent or you were the buyer's agent, and they are looking for you for the aspect of the file. And you may come across those scenarios, okay? Again, not here to scare you. Don't be afraid. Take the initiative and go, full force into your business.
Um, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If a buyer and sellers are having a dispute, do you have to get involved as a buyer's agent? Are they involved you? Are you automatically involved, or no, not necessarily?
A buyer dispute. Would be more specific on what you mean by a
Meaning,
buyer.
okay, it's like, buyer is having problem with the property, and then seller is not cooperating. Now, does agent always be the one? Okay, okay. I thought that when people have an agent, the agent is always the one that always gets sued instead of the buyer or the seller. Is that correct?
Well, are you referring, Farah, are you referring through escrow, or this is something after escrow?
No, something that happened during escrow and the transaction closed. Now, if the buyer is having an issue, instead of suing the seller, do they come and sue the agent, the buyer's agent? Or they could go directly sue the seller?
Well, it all really depends on what the situation is.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you a situation that happened, okay? I'm not going to disclose the names of the agents, but something similar to that happened. One of our agents represented the seller, listed a property up in the high desert. The deal and ultimately closed. The buyer, after close of escrow, got a letter from the HOA that there was a class action lawsuit against the HOA or the developer of the property, the developer, because there was issues with the construction of the condo.
Mhm.
Ultimately, the buyer hired an attorney, and the attorney ended up sending out letters to the seller, the listing agent, and also the buyer's agent, who was represented by the buyer, saying, hey, you never disclosed that there was a class action lawsuit. The seller was aware, but the seller at the time was going through a divorce situation and failed to input that as part of the disclosures.
Oh.
Ultimately, now we're in a liability situation. I don't know. I don't think so. This has nothing to do with the listing agent or the buyer's agent, because this was a seller disclosure, not an agent disclosure.
Okay.
But the agent and the company was named on this complaint. Now, as a company and as an agent, we have to proactively engage in those and, try to nip this in the rear immediately. Even though we have nothing to do with that claim, obviously the buyer is, it's a very nuisance complaint, because this has to do with the developer. They should be going after, but we have to address it, take the appropriate action and process to ultimately get this settled without getting any additional claims against us. And this is where the attorneys and our E&O insurance will come into place. This is why we pay errors and omissions, to help you navigate through that process. But again, to address your question, Farah, I don't believe it's an agent situation. This is between a buyer and seller. Now we can be proactive in our position, and in our position is ultimately to provide whatever file information we have, the documentations that addresses this. Now, the seller was in agreement that the seller failed to provide that known material facts about this class action lawsuit. And that did happen. But is it the agent's fault? Absolutely not. The agent was not aware of this class action lawsuit until this was brought to their attention. But we still have to address that component in our position.
Okay.
Okay.
So having the insurance E&O will protect us in situations like that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why you pay into your E&O insurance. All right, there's another question that came in. Simon, I thought we can make one offer at a time, so can we make multiple offers at the same time? The answer is yes, you can. You can make multiple offers to different properties. There's a form called possible representation of one buyer or sellers in place. Meaning in our positions, yes, we can submit multiple offers, but once an offer gets considered and accepted, you have to immediately send a withdrawal of offer. And that withdrawal of offer is known as the WO, withdrawal of offer, indicating that the buyer is withdrawing their consideration with that particular offer that they submitted. Now, it's a very touchy situation. You'll get different variables and different conversations. Do I recommend sending multiple offers? No. But we are in a market right now that are seeing these type of situations. Very low inventory, tons of buyers submitting offers, because now you're in multiple counteroffer scenarios. You find and identify a property that a buyer is interested, then you find out from the listing agent that there's 10, 15, 25 offers on the table. This is the reason you have to submit multiple offers. In a regular market, we probably wouldn't be submitting multiple offers, but in today's time, multiple offers is what we're seeing right now, okay? Now, what happens if you submit 2 or 3 offers and all 3 offers get considered? How do you handle that situation, right? That's a good problem to have.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Hey, that's a good problem to have. Obviously, you know, there's contingencies in place. One of the contingencies, obviously, if the buyer does not deposit their good faith deposit in escrow, then the seller ultimately will send a notice to perform, and if the buyer doesn't perform, they can cancel. Now, I like to be very transparent and very open with the scenario. You know, if a circumstances does happen, this is why everything is really time of the essence. And this is where having conversations with your buyers to understand, you know, what property they truly want, and tidying up that offer, you know, concise with your position. And you know, when we talk about win with sellers, we'll really dive in deep on having conversations with the listing agent and how you approach, you know, that avenue to be considered. Because like some of these seasoned agents, before they even submit an offer, they're already making dialogue and conversations with the listing agent, asking those right questions. You know, how many offers on the table? When is the seller considering to review offers? What is the seller looking for? A faster closing, rent back, higher deposit, higher price. I mean, there's so many variables, but asking those right questions will ultimately get your offer in a position. It's no difference in a resume, okay? The better your resume looks, the better opportunity that will be considered over the ones that are not being considered. And that's very important to understand. And I'm glad Ho's on this call, because Ho is a prime example that he has definitely dialogue with listing agents when representing a buyer on how to approach those conversations, okay? All right, let's go ahead and continue. So now we're gonna be talking about the leads to appointments, okay? Leads to appointments. Going back to the original conversation of the 7 levels of your process, we're going to dive in really deep into leads to appointments, okay? So what does this mean? What does this entail? Well, this is a very crucial. The more leads that you're putting into your pipeline, the more opportunities that you're going to connect with more buyers, because conversations can take you, you know, to a certain extent, But what ultimately gets you to the position of submitting offers, working with this buyer, is different components that lead to that appointment. You're constantly gonna be lead generating. We always talk about that. Is lead generating is the foundation to your success in real estate. If you're not picking up the phone, if you're not connecting with buyers on a daily basis, I hate to say this, you're not going to see the true results of why you got a real estate license. Okay, leads are important. Every day is a contact sport. Every day you should be connecting with minimum 20 to 25 opportunities, because you're going to get a lot of no's before you actually get a yes. Now, buyers are a little easier right now than sellers. Okay, but this is not today's topic about working with sellers. Right now, we're talking about just working and winning through the process with buyers. But here's, the leads that will ultimately get you to be writing more offers. Now, leads everywhere. So start with your prospect. Who can you prospect? So here's a couple examples that I recommend. Right now with COVID, obviously that has changed, but there's still agents that are going out door to door canvassing. They're basically door knocking. Okay. I know one of our agents hits Gardena, and they're out there, passing out their flyers, their campaigns. What activities, market trends, stats, or they just picked up a new listing and they're having conversations with the local homeowners. Hey, we just listed a property over at 123 ABC. It's 375 or 575,000. I know when we get a new listing, there's one or two or three potential buyers that are looking to move into the community. Who do you know? And that opens up a dialogue. There's many variables. This is why you need to know how to understand role playing and scripts and dialogues. Geographical area, whatever area that you're going to be focused on, guys. If it's Torrance, if it's Redondo Beach, Palos Verdes, Gardena, Carson, Hawthorne, whatever city, a farm area, you got to have an area that you want to focus on and be consistent in that geographical area. For a lot of us, open houses was ideal to find potential buyers. Right now, unfortunately, because of COVID, open houses are just not doable. But once that is lifted and we're allowed to do open houses, believe me, there's opportunities with open house. I'll be the first to admit, I love doing open houses. I hit a certain parameter price point, that I like to focus, because there's a certain clientele that I want to work on. So when that time comes, believe me, on the time that I have the ability to do so, I'm going to go out there and do open houses. Some of your top players love doing open houses because you'll spend 2 to 3 to 4 hours either on a weekday or weekend, and ultimately buyers will come. Now it's your job to have those conversations, to break the ice and see if this potential buyer is working with an agent. If they're not, there you go. That's a potential client. You need to know what their motivation is. Why is the reason that they came to this particular open house? So when that time comes, believe me, there's strategies, ways of approaching. It's like an experience, depending on how you approach those open houses will ultimately get you to connect with more buyers. There's some agents that go above and beyond, provide, water, snacks, some food, stuff to really give that buyer that experience, and they may be a potential seller. Just because a buyer comes into an open house doesn't mean they're ready to buy. Maybe they're thinking about selling. So knowing how to have those conversations is a key component to your success. Working with past clients, for some of us that have done business, have been in the industry for quite some time, you have your past clients. Are you having those connections? Are you redirecting and following up with your past clients? You never know. the trend is 3 to 5 years. Every 3 to 5 years, a potential seller will ultimately sell. But also right now with buyers, you know, they're out there. Go find them, go identify them, and then go through the motions and the process to get them into a home. Hitting your sphere of influence, okay? Sphere of influence, you know, is an important component. How many people do you have in your database? You know, your barbers, your hair salons, people that you've done business outside of real estate, you know, hitting them up and having those conversations. Hey, by the way, I'm in real estate. I work for KW. You know, having those conversations, you just never know if they're in the position to buy. You know, some of the advertisement, obviously, there's many here on the chart. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can also do mail campaigns, just sold, just listed, magazines. I know we have marketing team that can help you by, we have outside source for marketing, you know, having a marketing campaign and a magazine. I know some of the top agents, you know, use and leverage themselves to really promote by branding themselves and really showcasing their position. Newsletter campaigns, magnets, calendars, quarterly market updates. You know, we have agents that do radio talk show as well. You know, the beauty now with social media is phenomenal. You know, you can be that position to, you know, start an event and have people following. You can talk about market trends. It could be small things, you know, how to showcase, how to stage your home, the initial process from A to Z to get financed. And maybe you can get a core affiliate to help you with those platforms. And when people start following, you know, they'll identify and you can attract potential buyers as well. Organizations, you know, in the past when we would have events here, I know that there's agents that are part of a university and they would have their events here. I'm thinking of one who graduated from UCLA and she would have her monthly meetings here with that core group. But her purpose of doing that was basically to identify, having them see, hey, this is real estate. You know, these are educated friends or colleagues or people she's associated with, but it ultimately gives her an opportunity when that potential buyer, when that potential client or associate is in that position to buy, they're going to think about you, you know, and there's many variables to that, you know, alumni, business network groups, chamber of commerce, charities, corporate relocations. I mean, there's so many things. Your church, if you go to church too, you know, and doing some type of organization. And it doesn't have to be physically. You can create it through Zoom. That's the beauty of what we're at right now. Geographical area components. You know, let's just say we're talking about first-time home buyer programs. Get a lender and do a Zoom and see how many participants can come into to a Zoom and go through the initial process of the A through Z process of getting you pre-qualified, okay? So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a quick little 5-minute break. I know I went a little over my time, so let's jump right back at 12:02, okay? So let's take a quick little break and then we can continue from there. We'll see you in a bit. Any questions before we take a break? All right, cool. I'll see you at 12:02.
Well, I just came in to say hi to people. Hey, Farah, how you been? I haven't seen you in a while.
Well, thanks, Ho.
Well, Farah already. How about you, Debbie? All good?
I'm good, huh? Hey,
Good to hear your voice.
good to hear your voice too. How's everything?
Busy.
Busy, huh?
Yep.
Taking listings?
Listings.
Getting the offer accepted. All right, so now Farah has been pre-approved for the loan. She's been through DU, which is desk underwriting. She qualifies for $850,000. Okay, so that's her actual pre-approval. She is putting 20%. She's getting a 2.75% interest fixed conventional. And I just got the call from the lender. She's golden, good credit, 750 FICO score. And so everything seems to align well. Now the next process. Okay, so ring, ring.
Hello,
Hey, Farah, it's Simon over at KW. How are you?
I'm great, Simon. How are you? Thank you for
Oh,
calling me
awesome.
back.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. I'm so excited. So Sam over at Gill Mortgage just called me and says you're golden. He was able to qualify you based on your income, your debt, up to 850,000. So that's awesome.
Oh, fantastic. What a great news.
Yeah, awesome. So the property in question is still available. I did reach out to the listing agent. His name is Ho. I know Ho. He's a phenomenal agent, does a lot of business out here in South Bay. So the beauty is I do have a connection with Ho. And right now he definitely has a couple offers on the table. So I want to see if we can go and see the property today if possible, because he's going to be presenting offers tomorrow afternoon with the seller. So I want to make sure that everything that this house hits all your bullet points of what you're looking for. So that way I can draft the offer, send it over to DocuSign, and then send it over to the listing agent.
Okay, yes. I'm really anxious to get the process going too.
Okay, wonderful. So part of the initial process for me to work with you is a buyer representation agreement, okay? And what this buyer representation agreement is basically an agreement between you and I. Now, I know originally we were discussing about you didn't want to sign anything, but I need a commitment from you, Farah, that I will, be fully responsive in my position to get you the property and go through the initial process of negotiating and explaining the entire process regarding all the disclosures, what the next step, and ultimately be able to hand over the keys. So part of that commitment is a written agreement, a buyer representation agreement that holds you and I. In case this property doesn't go through, then at least I already know the parameters of what you're looking for Torrance, Redondo Beach, and PV. I'll send you all these listings, but my goal is to get you to get this property. And at the end of the day, if you're not completely happy with the overall experience working with me, by all means, I'll rip the contract and you can go on your way. But I just need a commitment from you that you'll be diligent, responsive, check your emails, check your voice messages when I leave you messages, and that we're both on the same page. Are you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I
Wonderful.
really am excited to get this thing going.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and send that buyer representation agreement, and it's basically a three-page agreement, just my responsibility, my position with the utmost care and respect, and to ultimately get you this property or any other property. It also gives you a timeline of, the commitment that you're going to be working with me. I need a minimum of 90-day commitment that you will work with me just in case this property does not happen to go our way. You're at least committed with me for 90 days. Not saying that it's going to need 90 days, but I need that commitment in place.
Now, this 90 days is for this particular property, or are you going to send me some other a list of other properties too?
Well, it all depends. If our offer gets accepted, then we're going to do an initial 30 days. It's only this property. But if you don't get this property, then unfortunately, we're going to have to look for other properties. Then I need at least 90 days, because again, it's a 30-day process. It may take 2 to 3 weeks till I find and identify another property. What if that property falls out of escrow? Now we got to start again. I at least need 90 days. I'm not saying I'm going to need the full 90 days, but that's my minimum requirements in order for me to work with you.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, no, I'm committed for you. You seem to have checked all the boxes, and I look forward to working with you.
Wonderful. Okay. Wonderful. So let's meet at the property in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Sure. I'll be there.
Wonderful. So we went through the emotions, looked at through the motions, I should say, not the emotions of the property. And now we looked at the property. Farah is in love with the property and now wants to make an offer. So, all right, Farah. So it looks like the house is ideal, right?
Yes, it was perfect. I loved it.
So the property is listed for $800,000. I did speak with the listing agent who I have a good relation with, Ho Chang, and there is 3 offers on the table right now. Now, he did provide me with some information. He did provide me that the highest offer he has right now is $810, and it is a 10% down, close in 30 days. So my goal is to ultimately help you get this offer is, where do you feel comfortable making an offer? Now, you do qualify up to $850,000, so there's some room there for you to go up on price. From a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely wanted, where does this house fall?
It's 10 as far as I'm concerned, but I really don't want to go too much higher than the asking price. I'm just, I would like to keep it, maybe 8, 15, not much higher than that. But, we could always go higher on down payment. So if that's going to entice the seller to accept our offer.
Yeah, awesome. Most definitely. I mean, any little tweaks that we do on the offer will ultimately get, a stronger deposit, shorter contingencies, reducing loan contingencies, appraisal, physical inspections, reduce them down will definitely help us. I think 815 is pretty reasonable. At least it gives us an opportunity to be in the game. And my goal is to have that conversation with the agent, so that way, at least we know that you will definitely get your offer considered.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so what we're going to do is we'll do 3% of the purchase price of 815 as your good faith deposit. We'll do a 28-day escrow. We're putting 20% down. Purchase price of 815 will reduce. And after talking to the lender, he is confident and comfortable releasing contingencies from 21 days to 18 days or 17 days. The beauty is, if that time comes and we need extra time, I can always ask the listing agent for an extension of time to release that condition. And this is the beauty, that I have the connection with the listing agent. We'll definitely work, because his goal is to ultimately close the deal for his client as well. If we need that time to extend the loan contingency, I'll be more than, I'll be proactive in my approach and having that conversation early on to give us and grant us that extension.
Now, the condition, when you do, when you say removing all the contingency, what if there's something wrong with the property? Then what's going to happen?
This is where you're going to have your due diligence, Farah, inspections, physical inspections, where you're allowed to do as many inspections to the property. Home inspection, electrical inspections, sewer inspection, roof inspections, foundations, anything and everything you're more than able to do. So there's a form that I'm going to be sending you. It's called the BIE form, the buyer election agreement, and it bullet points all the different inspections that you can do. It's a checklist of items that you can do. The most general is your home inspection, but that's just a general inspection. But if you really want to get a thorough understanding of the property, then ultimately other inspections should be recommended. Because the home was built in 1955, I don't know if the sewer has ever been replaced or if there's any issues of the integrity of the sewer line. I highly recommend that you do a sewer inspection as well. Now, based on the general inspection, the inspector may, highlight some concerns regarding the overall condition of the property. We can then identify and get an estimate of what the cost to repair or replace that specific, if it's electrical, if it's plumbing issues or roof issues. We will explore those options.
Pays for those if they need to get repaired.
Exactly.
Who pays for that?
Well, it all depends. There's three things that can happen. We can send out a request of repairs, Farah, asking for the seller to do the repairs. We can ask the seller to do what is called I already lost my chain of thought, a credit in
Right.
lieu of the repairs. So we can ask the seller to give us the credit in lieu of the repairs, meaning they're not going to do the repairs, but they'll do the actual credit. So after, we submit the request of repairs, there's 5,000, 8,000 in lieu of the repairs, we just ask for a credit towards your closing costs.
Okay.
With that, also, we can ask for a price reduction, as well, a combination of a credit or repair or even a price reduction as well.
Okay.
Okay?
We're not gonna lose their property if we ask for price reduction?
Say that again?
We're not gonna lose their property if we ask for price reduction?
No, not at all. We're tied in. The
Okay.
seller is committed to the initial process as much as you are. The
Okay.
only way we can sever this relationship is once we have executed a cancellation from all parties, meaning you cancel, the seller cancels. Then you can walk away, the seller can walk away. But the goal is to get this property and then negotiate and ultimately make it a win-win for all parties, okay?
Perfect. Okay, great,
All right,
great.
awesome. So I'll be submitting the offer and presenting the offer to the listing agent, and then cross our fingers that we get our offer considered. There may be a potential where they'll send us a counter as an incentive, and usually because there's other offers, they may ask us for a what's called a multiple counter offer, meaning give us your highest and best. They may ask for certain conditions to be reduced, but once I know and have that conversation with the listing agent, I'll get a better understanding. But I think our offer is pretty solid, and it all depends. They are going to be presenting all offers tomorrow at 3 o'clock. There may be other offers that might come in, but I just want to make sure that you and I are on the same page on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, wonderful. I'll keep you posted, let you know.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, cool. All right, so that kind of gives you a perspective of where we stand, but for the sake of time, guys, I'm going to have to cut it just because I do have a 1:30 appointment. It's a lot of information, but I'll try to answer any of your questions if you have right now. Give you guys a good 5-10 minutes to address any of the questions you have. Any questions? Oh, any questions from your end? Anything that you'd like to add?
Oh, no, all good. That was a good conversation.
Okay.
That was great.
I'm gonna add some of that to my conversation because I do it a little different. So
Well, there you go. Every instructor does their pitch a little different. This is just mine. It's not saying it's the right way or the wrong way. Everyone has their own position in how they do it. And this is why you want to be very diligent in your approach and jump into all these lectures, because you may pick up something that you can use as your arsenal to navigate your position with your buyers or your sellers. And I'm a true believer that the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. I wish I would have had more time to now have that conversation with the listing agent, and how I approach those conversations to really get a good perspective and a good foundation of where he stands, because my goal is to build that rapport with the agent. And I know how Ho works. He works very diligent in having connections with the agents, because the goal is that when an agent, especially here in the South Bay, I don't know what it is, but here in the South Bay, it's not what you know, it's who you know in this industry. They'll be more compelled to work with you if they know you than someone that they have never worked with, because you're in a relationship for 30 days, 45 days. So having that dialogue and that conversation would help you navigate. Not saying that just because you have that connection, they're going to work with you either, okay? Because at the end of the day, it's the seller's decision that will alter if your offer will be considered or not. Because I've had to turn down offers that come in with people that I have relationships with just because their offer was not the best. But if I get at least some information from Ho where the seller needs to be, I can navigate those conversations. With that being said, Ho can also be like a wall and not provide me with anything. And there's agents that just don't want to provide anything. You can't force a listing agent to provide you with any information. But if there's some dialogue and some good conversations, you might be able to pick and get some intel to ultimately arm yourself and position yourself to have a good, solid offer that your offer will be considered. Okay? But with that being said, if there's no additional questions, I appreciate your time. Thank you, Ho, for providing us with the loyalty agreement.
My pleasure.
And,
See you next time.
We'll see you guys on the next one. I'm going to be having one for Win with Sellers too. I'm not sure if I'm going to have it in November or December, but stay tuned, guys. It'll be on the calendar. If you have any questions, guys, and I mean this with sincerely, reach out, send an email, call me. I'll be more than happy to provide you with additional information, okay? Unfortunately, my time is up. This is, like I said, like a 6 to 8 hour curriculum. I try to condense it as much as I possibly can, but I also wanted to give you a perspective on role-playing, how the process goes, okay? I hope this was of value to you. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So much.
It was awful. Thanks. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.